We've got Merritt Centennials head coach and GM Luke Pierce on the line with us. Luke, I guess we could sort of call this a 1 month to go before the season update. There's lots to talk about. First, thanks so much for taking the time to chat.
Yeah, you bet, Brian. We're getting down to crunch time here, so it's getting exciting.
Yeah, no kidding. The countdown is on. Now, obviously, we've seen a lot of news and notes sort of come out over the last week or two. Let's start off with the exhibition season. You've got a 5-game slate. First off, I wanted to ask you, what's the reasoning behind having a game in 100 Mile?
Well, we had talked with Prince George, and it's a little difficult for them now with Cornell out of the league. They used to rely on a couple exhibition games with them, and they're having a little difficult time now trying to find opponents. So when the idea for the 100-mile game was presented to us, we thought, it's not only a good opportunity for us to get out there and expose ourselves to a larger fan base, but also kind of helps PG out a little bit with getting them in a game here.
Do you think that recruiting-wise that there might be some benefits? Because obviously Prince George might have a bit of a monopoly when it comes to the Cariboo region, but the fact is you get your team up there, and there could be potential players watching that game.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's already proved a benefit to us as a young 16-year-old that we think is going to be a pretty good player down the road who's from 100 Mile House. We had him in our camp, and he's had some options for different main camps to attend, and when we discussed with him the possibility of him getting an exhibition game in his hometown, he thought that was pretty interesting, and has kind of persuaded him to come here and be in our camp and push to take a roster spot here.
Do you know if this has anything to do at all with that committee that wants to bring a KIJHL team to that community?
It could. I know that they've discussed doing it in the past. Like PG went down there last year with Cornell and had a game, and seemed to be received quite well. So I think it's a great new arena, a great facility for probably junior B hockey, and the town's growing itself. So we're excited to get in there, and especially as our first game, it gives the guys a little bit less jitters as playing in a BCHL site, and hopefully the game goes well.
Now, as for the exhibition schedule itself, you've got those 5 games over the course of, basically almost 3 weeks. Is that something desirable for you?
Yeah, it is. It's much more appealing than the past schedule where we used to play, sometimes 4 games in 5 nights or 5 and 6. It gives us a little more time to prepare for each game and get our players into some sort of system play. So we're not only assessing them during the game on their individual skills, we're also assessing them on their ability to comprehend what we're teaching and some of the basics of the style of play that we hope to have. So I think the exhibition, as it gets later even into the second week, is going to be some really good hockey, and I think for the fans it's also a benefit. They don't see the typical scrambly exhibition style of games. They'll see some real high-end, very close to regular season type action.
Now, and that's what I was going to mention, is that what's the mindset for yourself and Joe Martin going into those games? Do you expect that come September 2nd, that game at 100 Mile, for that to be the same roster that you're going to have on the 23rd of September?
No, the second and third especially are kind of our chances for us to get some young kids in that we feel deserve an opportunity to play some exhibition games just to get their feet wet, but possibly aren't ready for playing in our league full time, and it's the only 2 games we have prior to high school starting. So kids of that age group, we'd like to make decisions on by then. I think even the game in Vernon will probably be testing out a few players to see some different combinations and things like that. But the weekend against Chilliwack, I think, is probably as close to our roster as you'll see, and definitely the last game, it'll basically be our opening night roster that suits up. So in years past, even the final exhibition game, you're still making decisions on, and we hope to have our full roster ready to go for the 23rd as soon as the week before.
Now, do you think that the way that things are working around the league with so much time between training camp and your first season game, that we might see some transactions because you've got that time to make decisions? Like it might be a little busier in September for moves than we might have seen previous years?
To be honest with you, Brian, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Predicting right now, I think it's going to be absolute chaos, and I think that there's going to be a lot of movement. I think there's a lot of people that have gone out and made a lot of commitments to players, and when you have a 3-week span to to criticize every angle on them. Sometimes you're going to change your mind, and people will be trying to move guys around, and I think it's going to create a lot of uncertainty in our league, and there could be some very good players come available because of it. And at the same time, we need to make sure here our mindset, and Joe and I have already discussed this, is that we need to stay focused on the group that we have in here and our task at hand, and not get clouded with everything that's happening throughout the league.
I guess the only situation where that would change that mindset is that if some move came along that absolutely blew you away.
Well, absolutely. The nice thing with having Joe here as well, who has experience, in the GM role, is that I think we'll be able to bounce it off each other and discuss whether it's something we even need to venture into. And most of these things don't happen, in an hour. A lot of it gives us some time to think about, and if it's a player or players that become available that we feel are exactly what we need, and we'll have more time to look at our roster and see how we look, then we can make those. In the past, those were really rash decisions that you make because you've only seen your guys for a couple of weeks, and it's dangerous to make them. But at the same time, we think we're bringing in a really quality group here to camp, and we feel we can make a strong BCHL roster out of that. If there's some players that become available because of all the moves and the time, and we feel they're going to make our team better, we'll venture down that road, absolutely.
Now, what's your mindset right now in terms of making moves? We've seen a lot of deals happen, and I mean, you've proven in the last couple of years with the Centennials to be more of a conservative type of GM. You like to build from within and this kind of thing, but now you see Vernon's made some deals in the last couple of weeks. Same thing with Salmon Arm. Chilliwack has as well. Westside picked up Richard Vanderhook from Surrey, obviously a top point guy there. Do you feel that you might want to keep up with the Joneses, or is it the status quo?
Well, we've been busy all summer just checking in around and seeing, what's out there and what we could get in on, and there's no doubt we'd like to try to add a guy who's proven he can put up numbers that are of a top 6 variety in the BCHL, and so far that just hasn't been the right move for us. I think the other teams that you see a lot of the so-called big-name teams making moves, and it's encouraging for us because we think the players that they're getting, albeit good players, and not to take anything away from them, we think we've got just as good a guys in here. So if teams like that are going after guys that are already out there, it looks good for us in this upcoming year that we've got some talent already we feel is comparable, and that our recruiting is going really well with the guys that we're bringing in. So we're obviously still in a situation we need to make some room for our 20-year-olds, and we haven't made those decisions in a hasty fashion and got burned. We're trying to wait it out, and like I said, I think the time leading up to and early in training camp is going to be quite chaotic, and we might be able to capitalize best at that time.
Well, and that leads right into my next question, is that one of those decisions on your 20-year-olds was made for you already with Max Vallis going to the U.S. Hockey League after being drafted by Omaha earlier this offseason. What are your thoughts on Max going down south to play?
Well, Max and I really didn't discuss as much as I would have liked. I touched on the subject with him when he was originally drafted there, and he told me that he wanted to talk it over with his family, and he understood the pros of coming back here and some of the pros of going to the USHL, and they needed to weigh those out. And I didn't hear a lot from him after that, and just kind of heard the same way everybody else heard that he was going to go down to the USHL. So we were prepared for that to happen, and I think it's something that Max has wanted to do for a long time. At the same time, I think that it's a very competitive league, and they recruit. I think on their latest release, they have 27 players coming into their camp that are signed, and they're not allowed to carry that big of a roster. So there's going to be some fallout, and there's a potential that Max could return, and we're not closing the door there. For his own good, he wants to make that team, and we encourage him and all the best to do that. But we're going to leave a little window here that there's a possibility that Max could be available for us.
Well, and I guess that's where you have to sort of weigh your options too. With a six-man 20-year-old roster you're allowed on your team, and also the 21-man roster too, that if Max doesn't end up making the Omaha Lancers, it forces you to sort of look at that and say, okay, well, do I leave a spot for him or sort of move forward much the same way you did when goaltenders, you had Keith Hamilton and Koholowenko going into last season, decided they were going to try their hand at the Western Hockey League, and you had said to them, hey, you know what, we're going to move forward here. So you're sort of saying something a little different with Max Vallis, but is that the case?
Well, I think it's, I don't by any means want to come across as we're leaving a hole open here for Max in hopes that he'll return. I think that would be foolhardy on any, GM's part. We're going to recruit our group and put our group together with the assumption that he's not here.
Okay.
Does end up coming back down the road or becomes available to us. If we're really happy with the roster that we have and feel that we don't need to make any changes, I think he becomes maybe a bargaining chip we can use to fill a different void if there is one. At the same time, if we feel like he's the type of player that is going to help our team and he wants to be back here, then we'll approach that if it comes. But to answer the question, we've moved on as if he's not going to be here and recruited and made plans for the season to go that way. And at the end of the day, if he does become available, we'll deal with it at that point.
Now, as it comes to training camp itself, you've announced that you're going to have a smaller roster, 2 intra-squad games. Invite-only was training camp, a lot different than previous seasons. So what's the feeling right now with recruiting and guys that you've got coming in? Obviously, Max leaves a big hole, 22 goals out of your lineup. Your returning scorer, top guy, is Regan Sekila with 20 goals. Jeff Jones goes off to college with his 22. So a lot of teams look at the Centennials and say, okay, well, in goal set with Lino and Tyler, defense looks pretty good too with the number of returnees. Obviously, you're not going to replace a Steve Tresera type of guy, but overall, your core of defense is returning. And then up front, there's a major gap in terms of scoring. Do you look at it the same way?
Well, I think anytime you lose a player of Jeff's caliber, it's obviously going to cause a void. But we have players here that we expect to have bigger seasons, and it happens when you have such a large rebuilding year. There's so many players that. You've got guys that could be top 6 players who end up playing in the bottom 6, or don't get the minutes that they probably could have, and we look within at guys like Dustin LeBrun that put up some pretty impressive numbers for the amount of opportunity he was given. We look at a guy like Jake Reichert who spent a lot of time injured. We hope to have a big resurgence from him. Evan Stack, if you take out the first 20 games of that season, he's on par for 60-plus points, and we feel he's going to be a major part of our offense coming back. Obviously, with Regan there, we've got a guy who's proven already he can perform. But for the most part, we don't want to change our philosophy of the way we play the game entirely. We want to continue to be a very stingy team to play against, a physical group, a hard-working group that plays both ends of the ice. I think with another year of experience and with Joe now here to help, we're going to look at different ways to create offense as a group, and we don't want to sacrifice and change the dynamic of our team and have us rely on 3 or 4 guys to go out there and provide the bulk of our offense. We want to do it as a committee, and I think we'll do a better job than we did of it last year, just being that much more experienced.
Now, that being said, in your recruiting over the summer, did you look at some guys, though, that could bring that offense?
Yeah, we've looked at some players that we think have the potential to do so down the road. I think it's a little different than the recruiting we did a year ago, where we were strictly focused on real strong two-way character type players. We still obviously recruit heavily on the character side, where we want kids that are going to fit into our community and fit in with our group mentality. But we've looked at guys who we think long-term can provide offense, whether they're capable of doing so in the first month or 2 of the season. It's pretty rare, but we think bringing them into a group where they can get comfortable and not have to be relied on heavily, they're going to adjust to the BCHL in a quicker fashion and hopefully be productive for us come later on this season or in the future down the road. And I think our defense as well, like you mentioned before, is not only experienced, but is going to be very capable of providing offense from there as well. So we're pretty happy with how well-rounded our group is.
Now, heading into camp in just a few weeks here, do you anticipate any more signings or any moves, or are you always sort of keeping your eye out, or are you waiting till camp, especially on the signing side of things?
Yeah, as far as signings go, I don't anticipate a lot prior to starting on the 28th. I would anticipate a move or two from our current roster. one, to hopefully solve our 20-year-old issue as we get into camp, and two, also to open up some holes that we feel we filled in recruiting, and that are going to make us a little bit younger and give us some fresh blood in here. I think that's also a key component.
Now, that's one thing that sort of alluded to, I talked to you earlier this summer, when everyone looks at the roster, they see, man, they got all these guys coming back. And you mentioned to me that why would you keep a roster of a team that was swept in the first round of the playoffs? It's not a knock against the guys, but the fact is that you feel that something needs to be changed a little bit. Is that obviously still the philosophy?
Yeah, for sure. I think it was a real good opportunity for us last year and getting into that playoff series and competing the way we did in the last 3 games. We saw some guys really rise up to the front, and some others that not only did their play kind of flatten off, but we thought they struggled significantly. So we want to make sure we start our year with guys that we feel are going to be ready to win it at the end of the season, and we don't want to be a team that makes a lot of changes throughout. So hopefully we can get as much done as early as possible, and have a team that's really well bonded and